The blue and red lights exploded in Maya Richardson's rearview mirror like a punch to the gut. She'd been driving 5 miles under the speed limit, hands at 10 and 2, every movement deliberate. The highway stretched empty in both directions, just her midnight blue Mercedes and the patrol car now pulling close behind. She guided the car to the shoulder with practiced precision. Engine off, hands on the wheel where they could be seen. Windows down before he even stepped out of his vehicle. 23 years of military service had taught her protocols, but this protocol was different. Older, written in her skin. Officer Derek Malloy approached with that particular swagger she'd seen before. Mid-40s, thick neck, mirrored sunglasses hiding his eyes. His hand rested on his belt as he walked, not quite on his weapon, but close enough to remind her it was there. He tapped her window with 2 knuckles. Sharp, authoritative. Maya turned her head slowly, meeting his reflection in those mirrored lenses. She could see herself fractured in the glass, a 42-year-old black woman in a white blouse and jeans, looking tired from a long day at the base. License and registration. No greeting. No explanation. Just the demand, delivered with the weight of absolute authority. The air between them crackled with everything unsaid. Maya reached for her glove compartment, moving like she was defusing a bomb. "I'm reaching for my registration," she said clearly, her voice carrying the officer's cadence she'd used in briefings with generals and foreign military officials. Malloy's jaw tightened. He didn't like her tone, too confident, too composed, too much. She handed over her documents through the window, her hand steady despite the adrenaline beginning to flood her system. He took them without a word, studying her driver's license like it was written in code. His eyes flicked from the photo to her face, back to the photo, measuring something she couldn't quantify. Then he looked past her, scanning the Mercedes interior with unconcealed suspicion. Leather seats. Clean interior. Her military jacket hanging in the back, its insignia hidden in shadow. "This your car?" The question landed like an accusation, each word coated in disbelief. 20 minutes earlier, Colonel Maya Richardson had been someone else entirely. She'd walked out of Fort Bragg's command building after a morning briefing where she'd addressed 200 soldiers about integrity under pressure. Her uniform had carried the weight of 3 deployments, 2 Bronze Stars, and a career built on excellence that refused to bend. The soldiers had listened with the kind of attention reserved for officers who'd earned their respect in combat. Not just in conference rooms, Maya had commanded joint task forces in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. She'd made decisions where hesitation meant body bags. She'd negotiated with foreign military officials who initially dismissed her until her competence became impossible to ignore. She held a PhD in strategic operations and had been shortlisted for brigadier general. But driving home in civilian clothes, that authority evaporated like morning fog. She'd changed in her office. Jeans, white blouse, comfortable shoes. Her daughter Zoe had a soccer game at 4, and Maya had promised to be there early for once. The uniform jacket hung in the back seat, a reminder of who she was when the world wasn't watching her through a different lens. The Mercedes had been a gift to herself after her 3rd deployment. Not extravagant by officer standards, but nice. Clean lines, midnight blue paint that caught the light just right. She'd worked for it, bled for it, earned every payment through promotions that came harder for her than for others. Her father had taught her the equation early. Be twice as good to get half as far. Maya had become 4 times as good. She'd thought it would be enough. The highway stretched through North Carolina pine country, the kind of rural stretch where traffic thinned and towns appeared like mirages between long stretches of nothing. She'd been thinking about Zoe's upcoming birthday, mentally planning the party when the lights appeared. Her stomach had dropped before her brain caught up. She knew this stop. Every black driver knew this stop. It wasn't about broken laws or safety concerns. It was about a nice car and the wrong skin tone piloting it. Maya had pulled over with her heart rate already climbing, muscle memory from decades of traffic stops kicking in. Hands visible. No sudden movements. Comply, survive, explain later if there was a later. She'd survived firefights in Kandahar. She'd navigated minefields in the Middle East. But this moment on American soil in broad daylight made her mouth go dry with a different kind of fear. "This your car?" Malloy repeated when she didn't answer fast enough, his voice sharpening with impatience. "Yes, officer." "It's mine." Maya kept her tone neutral, professional, empty of the irritation building in her chest. He studied her license again, his finger tapping against the plastic. "Maya Richardson." He said her name like he was testing it for authenticity. "Where you coming from?" "Work." "Where's work?" Maya hesitated. Military bases were federal jurisdiction, and cops like Malloy didn't always appreciate that distinction. Fort Bragg. His eyebrows rose above his sunglasses. "You military?" "Yes. What do you do there?" The question came loaded with skepticism, as if women like her only cleaned offices or served food. "I'm an officer." She left it at that, Malloy smirked. "Officer, right." He glanced at the Mercedes again, calculating. This is an expensive vehicle for a soldier's salary. The implication hung between them, thick and ugly. Maya's jaw tightened. "Is there a reason you pulled me over, officer?" "I'll ask the questions." He leaned down closer to her window, and she caught the coffee on his breath, the cologne that couldn't quite mask old sweat. "Where'd you get the money for a car like this?" The question was so naked in its assumption that Maya actually blinked. "I bought it." "With my salary?" "Uh-huh." He straightened, looking down the empty highway like he was considering his next move. A pickup truck passed slowly, the driver rubbernecking. "You got proof of purchase?" "Bill of sale?" "Not on me. It's at home." "Convenient." Malloy handed back her license but kept her registration. "Sit tight." He walked back to his patrol car with deliberate slowness, his boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. Maya watched in her side mirror as he climbed into the driver's seat, speaking into his radio with animated gestures. Then she saw it. He was laughing. Saying something to his partner, gesturing toward her car. Grinning like this was entertainment. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel until her knuckles went pale. Another car slowed as it passed, a white SUV with a woman driving. She had her phone out, filming. The woman met Maya's eyes for a brief second, mouthed something that might have been, "I see this," and drove on. Then another vehicle, a delivery truck whose driver pulled onto the shoulder ahead of her, stepping out with his phone raised high. The traffic stop was being documented. Multiple angles, multiple witnesses. Maya's military training kicked in. Evidence, chain of custody, documentation. She reached slowly for her purse, careful to keep her movements visible, and pulled out her phone. Voice memo activated. Camera aimed at her lap. Audio recording everything. Malloy was still in his car, taking his time, making her wait. Power play. Humiliation tactic. She'd seen it in interrogations overseas. Control through delay, submission through uncertainty. But she wasn't some frightened civilian who'd fold under pressure. She was a colonel who'd stared down enemy combatants and foreign officials who'd underestimated her exactly once before learning better. She reached into her gym bag on the passenger seat, her fingers finding the leather holder where she kept her military ID, the one with her rank clearly printed. The one with her security clearance level that opened doors most civilians didn't know existed. The truth was about to shatter someone's afternoon. Maya sat in the weighted silence of her Mercedes, phone recording in her lap, watching Malloy laugh in his patrol car. Her pulse hammered against her throat, each beat a reminder that she was still here, still breathing, still in control. But control felt thin, stretched over a rage so old and familiar it might as well have been bone deep. She'd commanded soldiers through ambushes. She'd kept her composure during mortar attacks that shook the earth and turned air into shrapnel. She'd made split-second decisions where hesitation meant death. And she'd carried those decisions afterward in the dark, where no one could see her shake. But this ordinary cruelty on an American highway stripped her down to something raw and powerless. Not because of the stop itself. Maya knew the statistics. She knew the stories. Every black person she'd ever known had a version of this moment, pulled over for breathing, while black, for existing in spaces that someone decided didn't belong to them. For the crime of prosperity, in skin deemed incompatible with success. She'd been pulled over 17 times in her adult life. 17 stops, most without explanation, or without citation except twice. Twice she'd gotten tickets for phantom violations. A tail light that worked fine, a lane change that never happened. Both times she'd paid the fine because fighting it cost more than compliance, and compliance was the price of survival. Her father had taught her the rules before she could drive. Hands on the wheel, no sudden movements. Yes, sir, and no, sir, even when they spit disrespect in your face. Survive first, dignity second, justice maybe never. She thought of Zoe, 13 years old, waiting at the soccer field with her phone probably blowing up with texts asking where Mom was. Zoe, who still believed her mother was invincible because she wore a uniform and commanded. Respect from soldiers who'd follow her into hell. How do you explain to your daughter that the uniform means nothing when it's not on? That excellence is armor that rusts the moment you take it off. That your mother, decorated combat veteran, strategic operations expert, leader of hundreds, can be reduced to suspicious prey on a highway because of melanin and a nice car. Maya closed her eyes briefly, letting herself feel the full weight of exhaustion. Not from the day, not from the work, from the grinding, relentless weight of being perpetually guilty until proven exceptional, and even then never quite absolved. She opened her eyes and checked her mirror. Malloy was still on his radio, still taking his time, still making her wait because he could. The witnesses' vehicles had moved on, but she knew the footage was already uploading. Social media moved fast. Viral videos moved faster. Maya's phone buzzed. Zoe, Mom, where are you? She typed carefully with one hand. Traffic. Be there soon. Love you. Then she picked up her military ID, the one with her rank in clear, undeniable print, and waited for Malloy to return, so she could watch his world tilt sideways. Maya Richardson learned about armor when she was 7 years old. Her father, Marcus Richardson, worked for the Postal Service, a steady job, respectable, with benefits and a pension he'd guard like gold. Her mother Diane was an ER nurse who worked night shifts, and came home smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion. They'd built a small life in Southside Chicago, in a neighborhood where gunshots were ambient noise and ambition was suspicious. Marcus used to polish his work shoes every Sunday night, buffing the leather until it gleamed. Presentation matters, he'd tell young Maya, his hands moving in careful circles. They're looking for reasons to dismiss you. Don't give them any. When Maya brought home straight A's, Marcus nodded with satisfaction but no surprise. Good, now do it again. When she joined ROTC at 17, her mother cried, not from pride, though that was there too, but from fear that her daughter was choosing a path where black women had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition. Baby, Diane had whispered, holding Maya's face in her hands the night before she left for basic training. You're going to be excellent. But don't forget, excellence won't always protect you. Sometimes it just makes them hate you more. Maya hadn't understood then. She'd been young, hungry, certain that competence was currency enough. Basic training had been brutal but fair. The army didn't care about your skin color if you could run faster, shoot straighter, lead better. Maya had thrived in that meritocracy, earning her commission at 21 and rising through ranks on the strength of performance reviews that read like love letters to capability. Her first deployment to Iraq had been a baptism by fire. She'd been a lieutenant then, leading a logistics platoon through supply routes where IEDs turned roads into graveyards. She'd learned to read terrain like text, to trust her instincts when something felt wrong, to make decisions with incomplete information because hesitation killed people. She'd earned her first Bronze Star there, during an ambush where she'd kept her convoy together through a firefight that should have shredded them. Her commanding officer had pinned the medal on her chest and told her she had a future in command if she wanted it. Maya had wanted it. She'd wanted it so badly she could taste it, not just the rank, but what it represented. Proof, validation, evidence that her father's shoe-polishing philosophy was right. That excellence was armor, after all. She'd climbed. Captain, Major, Lieutenant Colonel. Each promotion came with scrutiny that her white male peers didn't face. She had to be fluent in not just tactics but politics, in reading rooms and managing egos, and proving over and over that her competence wasn't affirmative action charity, but earned through blood and sleepless nights. Her third deployment to Afghanistan had nearly broken her. She'd lost 3 soldiers in her command, an RPG attack during a patrol she'd authorized. She'd written the letters to their families, attended the memorials, carried their names like scars, but she'd also led her remaining troops through the rest of the deployment without another casualty, through sheer force of will and tactical brilliance that her superiors couldn't ignore. The second Bronze Star came with a promotion to full colonel. At 40, she'd commanded a joint task force of 800 personnel. At 42, she was being discussed for brigadier general. Her father had lived long enough to see the first Bronze Star. He'd held it in his work-worn hands, those hands that had polished shoes and carried mail and provided for his family with dignity. And he'd cried, "You did it, baby girl. You built the armor." He died 5 years ago, sudden heart attack, gone before the ambulance arrived. Maya had worn her dress uniform to his funeral and felt like a fraud. Decorated officer, combat veteran, leader of hundreds, and she couldn't save the man who'd taught her how to survive. Now, sitting in her Mercedes with a cop's laughter echoing from his patrol car, Maya understood what her mother had tried to tell her all those years ago. Excellence wasn't armor. It was just a heavier target. Malloy finally emerged from his patrol car, a citation pad in his hand and a smirk on his face that made Maya's stomach clench with recognition. She'd seen that expression before, on the faces of foreign officials who'd tried to dismiss her in meetings, on the faces of superior officers who'd questioned her tactical decisions until results proved them wrong, on the faces of men who resented her existence in spaces they'd claimed as their own. He approached her window with the slow, theatrical pace of someone savoring power. "Ma'am, I'm citing you for a broken taillight." He began writing, his pen scratching across the pad with deliberate pressure. Maya's voice came out level, controlled, stripped of the fury building in her chest. "My taillight isn't broken." I observed it flickering. He didn't look up from his writing. "It's not flickering. The car is brand new. I can step out and we can verify together." "That won't be necessary." Still writing, still not meeting her eyes. "You can contest it in court if you disagree." The delivery truck driver was still parked ahead, still filming. A sedan had pulled over behind Malloy's patrol car, a white woman with her phone raised high, capturing everything. Maya made her decision in the space between heartbeats. She reached into her gym bag and pulled out her military ID holder, flipping it open to reveal the card with her photo, her rank, her security clearance level printed in official Department of Defense formatting. "Officer Malloy," she said, her voice shifting into the tone she used when briefing generals. "I'm Colonel Maya Richardson, United States Army, currently serving as Deputy Commander of Strategic Operations at Fort Bragg." She held the ID out the window, where he could see it clearly, where the cameras could see it, where there would be no question of what happened next. Malloy's pen stopped mid-stroke. His eyes flicked from the ID to her face, and Maya watched something flicker across his expression. Confusion, disbelief, then a flash of barely contained rage that someone he'd profiled. Dismissed, humiliated, was revealing herself to be exactly what he'd assumed she couldn't be. "You're—" He caught himself, recalibrating. "Colonel?" "That's correct." Maya kept her voice neutral, professional, giving him nothing to grasp onto. "I've been serving for 23 years. 2 Bronze Stars, 3 combat deployments, currently cleared at the highest levels. The Mercedes is purchased and paid for through my officer's salary, which I'm happy to verify if you'd like to contact my commanding officer. Lieutenant General Marcus Thompson at Fort Bragg Command." She watched him process this, watched his jaw tighten as he realized the traffic stop he'd been enjoying had just become a minefield. Behind him, his partner emerged from the patrol car, younger, maybe late 20s, looking uncertain. He approached cautiously, glancing at Maya's ID, and his face went pale. "Derek," the younger officer said quietly, "I think we should—" "I've got this, Patterson." Malloy's voice was tight, controlled, but Maya could hear the edge underneath. He was trapped now, caught between backing down and admitting error, or doubling down and hoping his authority trumped hers. Men like Malloy always doubled down. He studied her military ID with exaggerated skepticism, as if official Department of Defense credentials could be faked. "This could be anyone's ID. It has my photo, my rank, my security clearance, and my fingerprint authorization. You're welcome to verify it through official channels." Maya kept her tone even, but something cold had settled into her chest. "Or you can continue with the citation for the taillight that isn't broken, and we can discuss this through formal complaint channels with internal affairs and my military legal team." The witnesses had multiplied. 3 cars now, parked at various points along the highway, phones raised. This moment was being documented from multiple angles, captured for posterity, ready to be uploaded the second it concluded. Malloy's hand tightened on the citation pad. He glanced at the cameras, at his partner's increasingly uncomfortable expression, at Maya's steady gaze that held no fear anymore, just cold. Calculated patience, Officer Patterson stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Derek, we should let her go. She's military brass. This could—" "I don't care what rank she holds off duty," Malloy interrupted. And there it was, the core of it, the thing he couldn't swallow. "Right now, she's just another driver with a suspicious vehicle history and an attitude problem." Maya felt the words land, felt them settle into the recording on her phone, into the videos being captured by strangers who'd stopped because something about this scene looked wrong. Malloy continued writing the citation, his movements jerky with barely suppressed anger. "Maybe next time you should drive something more." He paused, choosing his words with vindictive precision, "appropriate for your neighborhood." The air seemed to crystallize around those words. Patterson's eyes went wide. The witness's phone stayed raised, catching everything. Maya's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened into steel forged in combat zones and briefings with presidents. She took the citation from Malloy's extended hand, her movements slow and deliberate. She glanced at it briefly. A fabricated, broken taillight violation, his signature scrawled across the bottom like a declaration of war. Then she looked up at him, meeting his gaze through those mirrored sunglasses, and spoke with the calm of someone who'd already won. "Thank you, Officer Malloy. I'll be filing this with my legal team and internal affairs immediately. I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon." She started her engine, smooth and controlled. Malloy stepped back from her window, his jaw locked tight. Maya pulled back onto the highway, watching in her rearview mirror as the young officer Patterson said something urgent to Malloy, as the witnesses lingered with their phones still raised, as her Mercedes carried her away from a moment that would detonate in ways Malloy couldn't yet imagine. Her hands were steady on the wheel. Her heart was hammering. Her phone was still recording, and somewhere already the videos were beginning to upload. Maya made it 3 miles before she had to pull over again, not because of police, because her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't trust them on the wheel anymore. She guided the Mercedes into a gas station parking lot, cut the engine, and sat in the sudden silence while adrenaline crashed through her system like a retreating tide. Her phone was exploding. Text after text, notification after notification. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. Someone had already posted dashcam footage. The video was titled, "Army Colonel Racially Profiled in Traffic Stop, Watch." 7,000 views in 10 minutes. The number climbed as she watched. 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. She opened the video with trembling fingers. The angle was from the delivery truck that had stopped ahead of her. Crystal clear footage of Malloy approaching her car, of the extended questioning, of his body language radiating suspicion and contempt. The audio was muffled but audible enough. His questions about where she got the money, his smirk, his final comment about appropriate vehicles. The comments section was already on fire. Maya closed the video and called the one person whose voice might steady her. The phone rang twice before her daughter answered. "Mom, where are you?" "The game's almost..." "Zoe, baby, I'm sorry. I got pulled over." Maya kept her voice level, trying to sound calm, trying not to pass her fear to her child. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm safe. I need you to know I'm going to be a little late, but I'm coming. I promise. What did you do?" Zoe's voice was small, already trained by 13 years of living black in America, to assume guilt before innocence. "Nothing." The word came out harder than Maya intended. "I didn't do anything wrong. The officer pulled me over because..." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, unable to explain what her daughter already understood instinctively. "Because of the car?" Zoe asked. "Yeah, baby." "Because of the car." Another silence. Then, "Did you show him your military stuff?" "I did." "Did it help?" Maya closed her eyes. "Not as much as it should have." She heard her daughter's breath hitch, heard the tears Zoe was trying to hold back. "I'll be there soon, sweetheart. I love you. Love you too, Mom. Be careful." Maya ended the call and sat with her phone in her lap, watching the view count climb. 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. The video was spreading like wildfire, jumping from local activist pages to regional news accounts to national platforms. Her military colleagues were calling now. Text messages from fellow officers, from soldiers she'd commanded, from her commanding general, Lieutenant General Marcus Thompson. "Maya, I saw the video. What do you need?" What did she need? She needed to rewind time. She needed her father's voice. She needed a world where 23 years of service and 2 Bronze Stars meant something more than a punchline to a racist cop's afternoon entertainment. But she couldn't have any of that. So instead, she texted General Thompson, "I need legal counsel and official support. I'm filing a formal complaint. This ends now." His response came within seconds. "You have both. We stand with you. Call JAG immediately." Maya started the engine and pulled back onto the highway. Zoe's soccer game was already in the second half by the time she'd arrive, but she'd promised to be there. And Colonel Maya Richardson kept her promises, even when the world tried to break her, especially then. By the time Maya reached the soccer field, the video had hit 200,000 views. She found Zoe sitting on the bleachers, phone in hand, her face a mask of careful control that broke the moment she saw her mother. Maya climbed the metal steps and pulled her daughter into a hug that lasted longer than either of them intended. "I saw it," Zoe whispered into Maya's shoulder. "Everyone saw it." "It's everywhere," Maya pulled back, studying her daughter's face. "I'm okay. We're okay." "He was so mean to you," Zoe's voice cracked. "You're a colonel. You've done so much, and he treated you like I was nothing." Maya finished the sentence because pretending otherwise would be a lie, and she'd never lied to her daughter about the world's ugliness. "But I'm not nothing. And neither are you." Remember that. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Maya answered cautiously. "Hello? Colonel Richardson? This is Jennifer Watts from the ACLU. I saw the video of your traffic stop. We'd like to offer you legal representation if you're considering filing a complaint. Maya's heart rate kicked up. I'm listening. What happened to you happens every day to people who don't have your platform or your protections. You have an opportunity here to make this matter, not just for you, but for everyone who gets pulled over for the crime of driving while black. Are you interested? Maya looked at her daughter, at the other parents who were watching her with curiosity and recognition, at her phone where the video views were still climbing. She thought about her father polishing his shoes, about her mother's warning that excellence wouldn't always protect her, about the 17 other traffic stops she'd endured in silence. Yes, Maya said, I'm interested. Good, we'll need you to file a formal complaint with the department's Internal Affairs Division. Document everything. We'll coordinate with your military legal team. And Colonel, Jennifer's voice softened, I need you to understand. This is going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to dig into your life. They're going to question everything. Are you prepared for that? Maya watched Zoe watching her, saw the hope and fear warring in her daughter's eyes. I've survived 3 combat deployments. I can survive this. Then let's make it count. Maya ended the call and immediately dialed Fort Bragg's JAG office. The Army's legal team connected her with a senior attorney who listened to her account with professional calm, asked precise questions, and promised full institutional support. Then she called Internal Affairs for the local police department and filed a formal complaint, recounting every detail of the stop, while the clerk's typing echoed through the phone line. Complaint number assigned. Case opened. Investigation pending. It felt simultaneously monumental and hollow, bureaucracy grinding forward, while viral videos rewrote the narrative faster than official channels could process. By evening, the video had hit 500,000 views. Local news vans appeared in Maya's driveway. Her neighbors watched from windows. Zoe fielded texts from classmates whose parents had seen the footage and wanted to know if that colonel was really her mom. Maya sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, drafting a statement with the ACLU attorney on speakerphone, choosing each word with surgical precision. They weren't just writing a response. They were building a case. 3 days later, she stood in front of a packed press conference room, wearing her full dress uniform, every ribbon and medal catching the camera lights like armor she'd finally learned how to wield. The night before the press conference, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around her, feeling the weight of what she was about to do pressing down like atmosphere at depth. Zoe was asleep down the hall. The video had hit 3 million views. National news outlets were calling it a defining moment in the conversation about racial profiling and police accountability. But Maya felt hollow. She got up at 2 in the morning and walked through her dark house in bare feet, past the framed photos of her military career, graduation from West Point, her first command, deployment photos where she looked years younger and infinitely more certain. She stopped at her father's photo on the mantel, the one from his retirement party, where he wore his postal uniform with the same pride she wore hers. "Did I do the right thing, Dad?" she whispered to the frozen smile in the frame. Silence answered. Of course it did. The dead didn't offer guidance, only absence. She'd received hundreds of messages of support. Fellow officers, civil rights organizations, strangers who'd seen the video and felt compelled to reach out. But she'd also received the other messages, the ones that appeared in her email and social media, dripping with venom, typical race card player, making everything about skin color. That cop was just doing his job. Death threats had started on day 2, enough that the Army had assigned security to her home, enough that Zoe now had an escort to and from school, enough that Maya questioned whether speaking up had made her daughter's life safer or infinitely more dangerous. She walked to her home office and opened the bottom drawer of her desk, pulling out the cigar box where she kept her father's things. His wedding ring, His postal service badge, a folded letter he'd written her before her first deployment. In case she didn't come back, Maya unfolded the letter, reading his careful handwriting by the light of her desk lamp. "Baby girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you made it home. That's the order I prayed for. You're going to do great things. You're going to face people who can't see past your skin to your strength. Don't shrink for them. Don't apologize for taking up space. You earned every inch of ground you stand on. Make them see you. Make them remember. Love, Dad. Make them see you." Maya refolded the letter with trembling fingers and placed it back in the cigar box. She thought about the press conference tomorrow, about standing in front of cameras and journalists and police officials who'd be looking for any crack in her armor, any weakness to exploit. She thought about Malloy, probably sleeping soundly in his home, probably telling himself he'd done nothing wrong, probably banking on the system protecting him the way it always had. And she thought about the thousands of black drivers who'd been pulled over today, yesterday, every day for decades, who didn't have rank or medals or viral videos to shield them, who'd just had to swallow the humiliation and drive away and teach their children the same survival lessons her parents had taught her. The exhaustion felt bottomless, not physical. Maya could run miles on 3 hours of sleep, but the soul-deep weariness of fighting battles that should have been won generations ago, of explaining her humanity to people determined not to see it, of being perpetually on trial for the crime of existing. She returned to bed but didn't sleep, just lay there watching darkness thin toward dawn, counting the hours until she'd have to put on her uniform and transform personal pain into public testimony. At 5:30, her alarm went off. Maya silenced it and sat up, her decision made sometime in the sleepless hours. She was going to make them see her, not as a victim, not as a symbol, but as a colonel who'd sworn an oath to defend justice and who was about to demand that justice apply equally to everyone, even if it cost her everything. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at a downtown hotel conference room. Maya arrived 30 minutes early, with her ACLU attorney Jennifer Watts, her military legal counsel Major Sarah Chen, and General Thompson, who'd insisted on being present in his dress uniform to send a message. The army stood with her. The room was already filling. Reporters from local and national outlets, representatives from civil rights organizations, community activists who'd been fighting police accountability battles for years, and seated in the back row with forced neutrality, the police chief and 2 department officials who'd been legally required to attend. Maya stood backstage, adjusting her uniform jacket for the 10th time. Every ribbon was aligned perfectly. Her colonel's insignia gleamed. Her shoes were polished to a mirror shine. Her father's lesson practiced until it became ritual. "You ready?" Jennifer asked, studying Maya with the sharp eyes of someone who'd prepped hundreds of plaintiffs for public testimony. "No," Maya said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." "Good answer." Jennifer handed her a folder. "Inside is the sequence we discussed. Your statement first, personal but powerful. Then the body cam footage we obtained through legal channels. Then questions. Remember, you're not just speaking to this room. This is going to be broadcast nationally. Every word matters." Major Chen stepped closer. "The JAG office reviewed your statement. It's solid. You're not violating any military protocols. You're exercising your rights as a citizen and an officer. The general's presence signals institutional support. You're covered." General Thompson, a 58-year-old combat veteran with silver hair and bearing that commanded respect, put a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Richardson, in 25 years I've served with some of the finest officers this country has produced. You're among them. What happened to you is unacceptable. Say what needs to be said." Maya nodded, swallowing against the tightness in her throat. "Thank you, sir." "Thank me by showing them why you earned those bronze stars." He smiled grimly. "Now go win this battle the way you've won all the others." They walked onto the small stage together, Maya at the podium, General Thompson standing behind her left shoulder in silent support, her legal team flanking her right. Camera flashes erupted like small explosions. Microphones bristled from the crowd. Maya placed her folder on the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the sea of faces waiting for her to speak. She found Zoe in the third row, sitting with Maya's best friend Angela, who'd taken her out of school for this. Her daughter's face was set with fierce pride and barely concealed fear. Maya held her gaze for a heartbeat, drawing strength from the same eyes that looked back at her every morning. Then she began. "Good morning. My name is Colonel Maya Richardson, United States Army, currently serving as Deputy Commander of Strategic Operations at Fort Bragg. Thank you for being here." Her voice came out steady, carrying the authority of 2 decades spent briefing generals and commanding soldiers. No tremor, no hesitation, just clarity forged in combat zones and carried home. 3 days ago I was pulled over while driving on Highway 87. I was not speeding. I was not driving recklessly. My vehicle had no mechanical issues. I was pulled over, I believe, because I'm a black woman driving a Mercedes. And Officer Derek Malloy found that combination suspicious enough to warrant an extended interrogation about where I got the money for my car, whether I was the legitimate owner, and where I was employed. She paused, letting the words settle. In the back row, the police chief shifted uncomfortably. "I want to be clear about something from the start. This is not about one officer. This is not about vengeance or personal grievance. This is about a pattern of behavior that affects thousands of Americans every day. People who don't have my rank, my platform, or my protections. People who get pulled over for the same reason I did, for existing while black in spaces that someone has decided don't belong to us." Maya opened her folder and pulled out the citation Malloy had given her. She held it up for the cameras. "This is a ticket for a broken taillight. My taillight was not broken. It was never broken. This citation is a fabrication created to justify a stop that should never have happened. Behind me on the screen, you're about to see body cam footage obtained through legal channels. I want you to watch what happens when an officer's assumptions collide with reality." She nodded to the technician. The large screen behind her flickered to life. The body cam footage began with Malloy approaching his patrol car, before he'd even pulled Maya over. Audio came through crystal clear. "Check out this Mercedes. Bet you $10 she's got warrants or it's stolen." His partner's response. "That's a nice car for this area." "Exactly. Something's off. Let's see what we've got." The room went silent. Every eye fixed on the screen as the footage continued. Malloy initiating the stop, approaching Maya's window, the escalating questions about her employment and the source of her money. His skepticism when she mentioned being military. His smirk when she claimed to be an officer. Then came the moment Maya had presented her military ID. On screen, Malloy's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and barely masked anger. The audio captured his partner's quiet warning. "Derek, we should let her go. She's military brass." And Malloy's response, delivered with deliberate venom. "I don't care what rank she holds off duty. Right now she's just another driver with a suspicious vehicle and an attitude problem. Maybe next time she should drive something more appropriate for her neighborhood." The final words hung in the air like a grenade, with the pin pulled. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras swung toward the police chief, whose face had gone pale. Maya let the footage play out. Malloy writing the fabricated citation. Maya driving away with controlled dignity. Malloy's smirk as he watched her go. Then the screen went dark. The silence in the room felt heavy enough to crush bone. Maya gripped the podium edges, channeling every ounce of composure she'd learned through military discipline. "I've served this country for 23 years. I've commanded soldiers in combat zones. I've negotiated with foreign military officials and advised strategic operations at the highest levels. I hold 2 Bronze Stars for valor under fire. Her voice didn't rise, but it sharpened like a blade being honed. And yet, on an American highway in broad daylight, I was treated with suspicion and contempt, not because I broke any laws, but because Officer Malloy looked at my skin color and my vehicle and concluded I didn't deserve either. That I was suspicious by definition. That I needed to be interrogated, humiliated, and put in my place. She paused, scanning the room. When I revealed my rank, his response wasn't to apologize or acknowledge his mistake. It was to double down. To tell me that my uniform doesn't matter, my service doesn't matter, my achievements don't matter, because when I take off that uniform, I'm just another black woman who needs to drive something more appropriate for her neighborhood. Maya's jaw tightened. Let that phrase sink in. Appropriate for your neighborhood. What neighborhood did Officer Malloy assume I belonged to? What vehicle did he deem appropriate for someone who looks like me? And how many other officers in this department make the same calculations every single day? She looked directly at the police chief. This isn't about one bad apple. The footage shows Malloy's partner making assumptions before the stop even happened. The footage shows a culture where racial profiling is so normalized it's captured casually on body cam. Because they didn't think there would be consequences. Because there usually aren't. A reporter raised his hand. Colonel Richardson, what do you want to see happen? Maya had prepared for this question. I want accountability. I want Officer Malloy investigated for racial profiling and false citation. I want his complaint history examined because I suspect I'm not the first person he's pulled over, based on assumptions rather than probable cause. I want mandatory bias training for this entire department, and I want policy changes that create real consequences for officers who abuse their authority. Another reporter. The police chief has stated that Officer Malloy was following standard procedure. Do you believe that's true? If racially profiling drivers is standard procedure, then the procedure needs to change. Maya's response came swift and cutting. If questioning someone about where they got money for their car is standard procedure, then the procedure is broken. If telling someone to drive a vehicle more appropriate for their neighborhood is acceptable conduct, then this department has a cultural crisis that goes far beyond one officer. The police chief stood, his expression carefully neutral. Colonel Richardson, the department takes these allegations seriously. We've opened an internal investigation. An internal investigation. Maya cut him off with surgical precision. The same internal review process that allowed Officer Malloy's previous complaints to disappear without consequences. Forgive me if I don't find that reassuring. She pulled another document from her folder. Officer Malloy has had 3 previous complaints filed against him for racial profiling in the past 5 years. All 3 were investigated internally. All 3 resulted in no disciplinary action. The pattern is clear. The problem is systemic, and I'm done being polite about it. The room erupted with questions, reporters shouting over each other. Maya raised a hand, silencing them. I'm not here as a victim. I'm here as a colonel who took an oath to defend the Constitution, which promises equal protection under the law. That promise rings hollow when officers can pull over citizens based on skin color and vehicle choice, then fabricate citations to justify unconstitutional stops. That promise means nothing when the system protects the abusers and dismisses the abused. She looked directly into the cameras. To every black driver watching this who's been pulled over for existing while successful, for driving a nice car in the wrong neighborhood, for breathing while melanated, I see you. Your experiences are valid. Your fear is rational, and you deserve better than a system that treats you as suspicious by default. Maya's voice gentled slightly. To the young officers who enter this profession wanting to serve with integrity, don't let this culture corrupt you. Stand up, speak out, be the change this system desperately needs. Because silence is complicity, and complicity makes you part of the problem. She closed her folder. I'll take a few more questions, but understand this isn't negotiable. I will pursue this complaint through every legal channel available. I have the platform, the protection, and the resources to fight. And I'm fighting not just for myself, but for everyone who doesn't have those advantages. This ends with accountability, one way or another. The questions came rapid fire after that. Maya answered each with devastating clarity, never wavering, never retreating. General Thompson stood behind her like a monument, his presence reminding everyone that she wasn't alone. When they finally left the stage 40 minutes later, the video of her statement was already going viral. 2 million views in the first hour, national news picking it up. Hashtags trending. Colonel Richardson, justice for all, accountability now. Back in the holding room, Jennifer Watts was grinning. That was perfect. You just changed the conversation. Maya wasn't smiling. She felt drained, exposed, raw. What happens next? Now we wait. The department will have to respond. The video is too damning to ignore. And with your military standing and public support, they can't sweep this under the rug. General Thompson squeezed her shoulder. You did good, Richardson. Your father would be proud. Maya's eyes burned. I hope so, sir. I really hope so. 6 weeks later, the police department announced its findings. Officer Derek Malloy was suspended without pay pending termination proceedings. His history revealed not 3 but 7 previous complaints of racial profiling, systematically buried by internal review processes designed to protect officers rather than hold them accountable. 2 other officers in his unit faced disciplinary review for similar patterns. The police chief announced mandatory bias training for all officers, body cam review protocols, and an independent civilian oversight committee with real investigatory power. It wasn't everything. It wasn't enough. But it was a crack in the wall that had held solid for decades. Maya sat in General Thompson's office at Fort Bragg, the citation for her broken taillight, now formally dismissed and expunged, sitting on his desk between them. Your conduct throughout this ordeal has been exemplary. Colonel, Thompson said, studying her with the assessment of someone who'd spent his career evaluating soldiers. You've shown grace under pressure that most officers couldn't match. The Army is proud of you. Thank you, sir. Maya's voice was quiet. Permission to speak freely? Always. I keep thinking about all the other stops that happened that same day. All the other black drivers who got pulled over for the same reasons I did, who didn't have rank or videos or legal teams to shield them. They paid their fabricated tickets and moved on because fighting the system costs more than compliance. What about them? Thompson leaned back in his chair. You can't save everyone, Maya, but you changed the conversation. You created accountability where none existed. That ripples outward in ways you can't measure. Maya nodded, intellectually understanding but emotionally unsatisfied. It still feels incomplete. Justice usually does. Thompson smiled grimly. But you did something most people can't. You stood up when staying silent would have been easier. That matters. That evening, Maya drove home in her Mercedes. Same highway. Same stretch of road. No blue lights appeared in her rearview mirror. She thought about calling it a victory, but the word felt too clean for something so messy. Zoe was waiting on the front porch when she pulled into the driveway. 13 going on 30, wearing the wisdom that black children learn too young. She hugged her mother tight when Maya climbed the steps. Mom, my history teacher talked about you in class today. He said you were making history. Maya pulled back, studying her daughter's face. How did that feel? Scary, proud, both. Zoe's eyes were serious. Do you think things will actually change? Maya could have lied. Could have offered easy comfort. But she'd promised herself years ago to never underestimate her daughter's intelligence or shelter her from hard truths. I think change happens slowly. I think we moved the needle. But the fight isn't over. It probably never will be. Every generation has to push a little further. Then I'll push too, Zoe said with the fierce certainty of youth. When I'm old enough? Maya's throat tightened. I hope you won't have to. But if you do, you'll be ready. They went inside together. Maya changed out of her uniform, hanging it carefully in her closet next to her father's old postal jacket that she'd kept after he died. 2 uniforms, 2 forms of service. Same lesson. Excellence is armor, but sometimes armor isn't enough. Sometimes you have to stand and fight anyway. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jennifer Watts. City Council voting on Civilian Oversight Committee next week. They're fast-tracking it because of public pressure. Your testimony created this. Be proud. Maya read the message twice, then set her phone down. Pride felt complicated, tangled with exhaustion and grief and the knowledge that she'd been forced to fight a battle that should never have been necessary. But she'd fought it anyway. And maybe that was enough. 6 months after the traffic stop, Maya Richardson drove past that exact spot on Highway 87. Zoe sat beside her in the passenger seat, practicing for her learner's permit, hands at 10 and 2, just like Maya had taught her. They were heading to Fort Bragg for a ceremony. Maya had been selected for promotion to Brigadier General, 1 star gleaming in her future, like a promise kept to her father's memory. But first, they passed the place where everything had changed. Maya didn't slow down, didn't flinch, just kept her hands steady on the wheel and her eyes on the road ahead, the way she'd been doing for 23 years through combat zones and traffic stops, and 1,000 moments where she'd had to prove her worth to people determined not to see it. "Mom," Zoe asked, her voice careful, "when I get my license, will cops pull me over like they did you?" Maya's hands tightened on the wheel before she forced them to relax. "Maybe, probably, I hope not. What do I do if they do?" "You stay calm. You keep your hands visible. You comply. You survive." Maya glanced at her daughter. "And then you decide whether to stay silent or speak up. That choice is always yours. But Zoe, listen to me. Your safety comes first, always. Your voice matters, but your life matters more. But you spoke up. I did. Because I had protections most people don't have. And even then it was hard and scary, and there were moments I wasn't sure it was worth it." Maya navigated through traffic, measuring her words. Speaking up doesn't guarantee justice. Staying silent doesn't guarantee safety. You do your best in an imperfect system and hope it's enough. They drove in silence for a while. Then Zoe said quietly, "I think you're brave." Maya's vision blurred. "I think I'm tired." But sometimes tired people are the ones who keep fighting because they know how much it matters. The highway stretched ahead, golden with late afternoon sun. Maya had been asked to speak at police academies about bias training. She'd been invited to testify before congressional committees about police reform. She'd received letters from strangers, some thanking her, some threatening her, all proof that her voice had carried further than she'd imagined. Officer Malloy had been terminated. The Civilian Oversight Committee was functional, reviewing cases with real investigatory power. 3 officers had been disciplined for racial profiling in the months since Maya's press conference. Small victories in a long war. But Maya didn't measure success in policy changes or disciplinary actions. She measured it in the teenager who'd written her a letter saying she'd watched the press conference and felt seen for the first time. In the grandmother who'd thanked her for fighting the battle she'd been too afraid to fight decades ago. In her own daughter, learning to drive without accepting that being pulled over was inevitable. "You know what I think about when I drive now?" Maya said, breaking the silence. "I think about my father polishing his shoes, about my mother working night shifts, about all the people who came before me and built the foundation I'm standing on. They didn't get to see the cracks in the wall, but they kept pushing anyway, because they believed someday the wall would break." Zoe looked at her mother with eyes that had seen too much too young. "Did your push break the wall?" "No," Maya said honestly, "but I made the crack a little wider. And someday, someone will push from where I stopped and widen it more. That's how change works. Generations of people pushing until the wall finally comes down." They pulled into Fort Bragg's main gate. The guard recognized Maya's vehicle and waved her through with a salute and a smile. Inside the base, She was Colonel Richardson, respected and valued for her service. Outside, in certain contexts, she was just another black woman subject to assumptions and suspicions. Both truths existed. Both would continue to exist. But Maya had learned something her father tried to teach her, and her mother tried to warn her about. Excellence wasn't armor. But silence wasn't safety either. The only path forward was to be seen, in all her complexity, all her strength, all her righteous anger at systems designed to dismiss her, to take up space without apology, to use her platform to amplify voices that couldn't carry as far. Some battles are fought with weapons. Some are fought with witness. Some are fought with the simple, radical act of refusing to disappear. Maya Richardson had spent 23 years serving her country in uniform. Now she understood that service looked different off duty, messier, harder, without the clear hierarchy and rules of engagement that military life provided. But she was a soldier, and soldiers didn't retreat just because the battlefield was uncomfortable. The sun caught her windshield as she drove toward the ceremony, toward that promised star, toward a future where maybe, just maybe, her daughter could drive any car she earned without explaining herself to anyone. Justice is slow, the road is long, but Maya Richardson drives it with her hands steady on the wheel, no longer afraid, no longer silent, no longer willing to make herself smaller for someone else's comfort. She chose to be seen. And in being seen, she made space for others to follow.